schemes for even affordable housings. But now, after these COVID situations and coming time, one should think for middle income people or middle income housing, or you can say middle class people. But see, when we are using the word middle class, then probably the word is not correctly representing the things. So we always say that middle income housing. See, middle income housing means government is not giving any subsidies or not very much conscious about providing enough housing stock for the middle income people. And in that case, two things is very important. One is genuine, whether it is a demand for not, that we have to check. And another thing that we have to check that what type of policies can be framed by the government so people can encourage to construct housing for middle income people. And also it is required that how to define this middle income bracket. That is equally important. So today's speaker, N.K. Patel, is good urban planner as well as architect and realtor. And Amruta is basically academicians from housing sectors. So both will give us some insights about these issues related to middle income housing. And as GICA is organizing such type of webinars, and every time we are trying to consider the group or pair of the people in such a way that one is actually practical person who is working in the field and another one must be the academicians. So our speakers give us both sides of the topic. Theoretical, what is required and how it can be addressed, and practical, what will be the problem and how it can be addressed. So now I request our treasurer, Rakesh Bhai, for introducing both the speakers. Thank you very much. Rakesh Bhai, are you there? Hello, Rakesh Bhai. Okay, let us Maitri.
Hello.
Maitri, Rakesh Bhai, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, Rakesh Bhai, please.
Please. Thank you, Vatsal Bhai. N.K. Patel, sir, a gold medalist, town planner and leading real estate developer from Ahmedabad, has taken over as president of the Institute of Town Planner India, ITPI, the premier national body of the town planners. Also, N.K. Patel, sir, is a gold medalist in urban planning from CEPT. He served in town planning development department of Gujarat State of government and also worked as town planner in Auda for nearly 60 years. Currently, he is serving as the chairman of National Real Estate Development Council, Gujarat. He is also former president of Gujarat Institute of Civil Engineers and Architects and post-chairman of ITPI Gujarat chapter. Also, I am introducing Amruta Patel. Miss Amruta Patel, she is visiting faculty in the Master of Urban Housing program at the Faculty of Planning, CEPT University. She is pursuing her PhD at CEPT University. She has been engaged in projects and research simultaneously for the last 6 years. Formerly, she had worked at the Affordable Housing Mission, Government of Gujarat. She had been associated with sanctioning and monitoring of housing for all kinds of action prepared by city governments of Gujarat. Experiences through professional practice and teaching have enriched her critical thinking about housing programs, policies, and debates. Thank you, Vatsal Bhai.
Thank you. Maitri, over to you.
Now I would like to request Narendra sir to...
Thank you, Maitri.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, President Dr. Vatsal Patel, for arranging affordable housing seminar, but it is a different kind of seminar. We know the income group with EWS, LIG, MIG, HIG. So this has been there since 1970. HUDCO and various public housing institute were classifying the things. But we know our friends, our neighbor, our relative, right? They are the middle class people. So their definition of the society, particularly the urban India, urban society, is different. These are the people, they are generally from the upper caste. These are the people, those who are working primarily in a private organization, private company, private corporate, private industrial units. These are the people, their income range starts from 25,000-30,000 to 60,000. These are the people are with some social value also. And we have found that, and I think most of the listener will agree with me, there is a public government hospital or a public hospital, and there is a private hospital. So during this pandemic also, if somebody happens to be admitted in a hospital from these middle class people, right? So they cannot go to the government hospital. They are very discerned. They had a small or rented property, but they had a clean environment. They know the things, but they don't have money to admit themselves or their relative in a private hospital. Similarly, it's a scenario with their wards or their children also. They cannot go to the municipal school or a government school. But they don't have a fund to send their children in a good private school. So this is the urban people, and most of them are migrants in last 10 to 20 years. So earlier they were from the town or they were from some villages, and they settle in nearby metro center. Either it is a Jamnagar or a Rajput or Ahmedabad or a Bhavnagar or a Surat. Looking to their contacts, looking to their social circle, so they settle. Why they are settling? Most of them are, at least they are the graduate. They have done BA or BCom, the common degree, right? But in that small town or in that village, they don't have any opportunity. So they migrate to the metropolitan area. And for them, as we say, ke roti, kapda or makan. So I always say in my address, ke roti or a bread, anybody can buy once or twice in a day. Kapda means your clothes. You can buy at least once or twice in a year. But buying a house or constructing your own house for all income group, hardly you can do once or twice. Suppose if I talk about myself, so I was staying in my father's house, and after this development and success or education, so I was able to do only one time in my lifespan, my shelter. So shelter is a primary need. And today's total, my discussion will be on this middle class housing. I'm not taking is a middle income housing, but it is a middle class housing. So Amruta, can you share my presentation, please? Thank you, Amruta. So this is an overview of affordable housing, but our focus, as I already narrated, is on a middle class housing. And I have tried at the end some exercise, and that is a Western Ahmedabad case study. So first we'll go very fast. What is the affordable housing? So affordable housing is a ratio of house expenditure to household income. So it is all will have a different affordability. So your housing expenditure and household income will decide your affordability. What should be the ratio? So generally in all our Indian or abroad planning literature, if we earn a X amount, so what should be our cost? So 7 to 8% is the transportation cost. So similarly, from your income, you can spend 30%. The Reserve Bank also agree with that. So if your salary is 20,000, then you can have a 6,000 rupees with you that you can spend as a rent or spend as your monthly installment. Now, there are the various affordable housing scheme definition. Next, please. Now, this is the Indian scenario. Here, as per the World Bank analysis, there is a financial year from where 2003 to 2021. So it is a comparison of few our neighbor and Asian country. See the Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. So in green street, there is a India. But if you see up to 2008-9, right? India was considered to be lower income, our per capita income of our population, right? So we shifted the India in 2007, right? From a lower income group country to lower middle income group country. So what does this shows? Okay, after 2007, right? There is an increase in the income. And that increase in income, if you divide it from EWS, urban poor, lower income, middle income group, so there is an increase in a population of a middle class people. And why it has been increased? So classically in 91-92, Indian economy was globally open. Number of the IT and ITES companies started. Privatization of various public sector things were started. And due to that, a huge service class has been emerged. And that service class, there are more of the people are from this middle class housing. Next, please. Now, this is a need of affordable housing in India. This is a general need. So our urban population increased by 2.8 growth rate. As per CAGR report, right? It is a decadal from 27.8 to 31.2. So this is a growth of our urban population, which is, I think, highest among the globe. So earlier, out of 1.21 billion population, 37.7 million people were the urban dwellers. Now, as per the Indian Chambers Federation of FICCI, which also estimate that India is going to increase some 900 people by 2050. So the pace of urbanization is likely to be increased at a compounded annual growth of 2.1%. So which is, just to note that, which is double than the China. Next, please. Now, we talking about the urbanization, we talk about the urban population, what is the increase of urban population. Now we'll go to housing shortage. So what is the definition? The real definition of housing shortage. So when excess of household over the acceptable housing stock. So when your number of houses are less than the family unit. Suppose in Ahmedabad, there are 6 lakhs family unit, but houses are only 5 lakhs. So it gives us the housing shortage. Then second thing, in some cases, the family or household, our average size in India, in urban India, is about 4.2 to 4.5% per family. So if you consider that, and in one house with a 2-room kitchen or 1-room kitchen, if there are 10 or 12 people are staying, why they are staying? They cannot afford another unit for their younger brother or elder brother. So this is, second is a congestion. First is we don't have a stock. Second is a congestion. Third is there are households, but they are not functional household. They are in dilapidated condition. It requires immediate repairs. This case we see in each monsoon, number of the buildings in Mumbai. Mumbai has a building 100 year plus old. So that 2 or 3 story building collapsed. So there is in census data, there is a housing stock, but it cannot be utilized. And fourth, there is a kacha household like in slums and other squatter development, which is required to be upgraded. So all these 4 things will add to what is a housing shortage. Next, please. So as per the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation, housing shortage in India was 18.78 million. So by this is a figure of 2012. So we had a housing shortage of 18.78. Out of that 18.78, if we further analyze, so 12% are living in obsolete houses, means that dilapidated houses, which can collapse at any time. 80% are staying in congested housing, like in chawl or in a 1-room kitchen in a housing board. Instead of 4 or 5 people, there are 10 or 12 people are staying. This report also states that around 1 million people are living in a kacha or non-serviceable, where there is no service, either water supply, sewage, basic civic amenity. And finally, over 500,000 people are houseless. So this is a overall cross-sectional analysis. So first, I told you about affordability. Then we told about, we know about urbanization. Then what is the definition of housing shortage and how it can be calculated. And as per the ministry report, exactly what is a cross-sectional analysis of housing shortage. Next, please. So this is a state-wise data. We'll not go in much detail, but you can see in Uttar Pradesh. So Uttar Pradesh required 3.07 million houses. Similarly, if we talk about Gujarat, so Gujarat is there where we also required 0.99 houses. So more than 1 lakh houses also required by the Gujarat. Next, please. Now, why I choose? In my initial address, I talk about little about middle class housing. So after the independence, there were few 5-year plans, first, second, third, fourth, like that. And in each plan, there were a number of the housing policy or housing program. So there is a DSUP program, there was an IDSMT program, there is a Rajiv Awas Yojana, right? In all the things, there was much stress has been given to downtrodden people, to the people, those who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So the urban poor, the EWS, the LIG. Not much has been done for the middle class housing. There is a classification MIG housing in HUDCO and other. But in that case also, in most of the cases, the cost of the MIG or higher income houses will be decided by cross-subsidizing the lower and EWS houses. If you talk the latest things like JNURM. So in JNURM also, number of the scheme has been done by Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. If we talk about Ahmedabad Urban Development Authority, some tower has been created by Gujarat Housing Board. There is a state Mukhyamantri Awas Yojana also. But most of the houses are lower than the middle class housing. If it now the latest program, housing program, which was the biggest program after independence in Indian history, that is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. I agree that it is a very excellent and successful program. But what happened in that case? Some of the middle class, which I am defining, they may have the income as per the PMAY. So they can have a subsidy of 1.78 lakhs rupees when they buy the home. But in that case, they should not have any house all over the India. So in their village also, they should not have a single house. So as we know, in smaller village, the house is costing 10 or 20,000 rupees, right? So his parents must have bought that house. And now he may be the owner of that house. So if he is owning a 20,000 rupees costing house in a village area, then Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana benefit he cannot avail. So major chunk of such middle class housing, they are having small house some 150 kilometers away in a small village. So they are not getting the benefits of PMAY Yojana. Next, please. Next, please. These are the, as I narrated, these are the various housing policies. So there was a national housing policy in 1988, then Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission in 2005. Then there is a National Urban Housing and Habitat Policies 2007. Then there is a interest subsidy scheme for housing for urban poor. There is a Rajiv Awas Yojana, Rajiv Rin Yojana, RRY, then Rajiv Awas Yojana. So all are there, but in that case, there is a little or negligible share for middle class people to get a house. Next, please. Now, if we talk about the urban budget, so if you can see, what are the benefits? So up to 1.5 lakhs, there is a tax deduction. 3.5 lakhs is a total tax deduction, right? And recently, after the first wave of COVID-19, excellent scheme has been started for affordable rental house. I have gone through it. Here I will not give you much detail, but that scheme is also not much practical. Looking to the location, looking to the cost, looking to the rent and other things. Till today, not a single scheme under the affordable rental housing scheme of central government has been cleared or somebody has applied. Next, please. This is a PMAY good progress, as I have said. They have approved some 47 lakhs houses. Number of the projects, number of the houses. So 8 lakh houses has been already completed. So that is a great achievement for the government. They have given the interest subsidy, that is CLSS, about 3,559 crore. Housing loan cost is 1,65,000. And 25,000 has been a central assistance. So 25,000 crore, I think it is the first scheme after the independence that central government has released so much huge amount. Next, please. We talk about the rental housing. So, and I have told you there is no single application to go for that scheme by any promoter, developer, or any cooperative society or any landlord. Next, please. Yes. Now, if we say affordable housing, this is to update you about what should be the carpet area. So in EWS, it's about 30 square meter. LIG is a 40 square meter. MIG, as per their classification, there is a middle income group 1 and middle income group 2. in my presentation, I am touching the middle class people. So up to 65 square meter, MIG2 house can be constructed. And there is a maximum selling price of the unit has been written. So in Ahmedabad, a 50 square meter real built up house, this is a square meter. So if you convert by 1.2 to 60 square yard house, and then if you add the super built up ratio, so that house will be around 1200 rupees per square feet. So in that case, 11 lakh rupees will be too low. And family income, you go just below the third one, annual family income. So family income includes if your wife is working, her income, your income. So it is very low. So the middle class people cannot have any benefit through this definition. This definition is a Government of Gujarat 2014. Next, please. So this is the classification done in 4 parts. They are distributed on the basis of income and affordability dwelling area parameter. Again, this is the same thing, but affordable dwelling area may be 120, which has been written here. Next, please. As per the PMAY, as per the CREDAI, HUDCO, NAREDCO, right? This is a classification where MIG should have income up to 12 lakh rupees. And eligible dwelling unit should be 120 square meters. So this is, I'm going to touch not the MIG2 part, but my presentation will be a little nearer to MIG1. Next, please. This is the government figure. I'm not agree with it. Okay, here you can see the percentage of slum population. So this population is not the real population. Why? Only the population of notified slums are generally included in it. That is one thing. Second thing, the people, those who are staying in a private slum or on a road area or in an encroached plots or private or public encroached plot, or the people are staying in a very congested houses, that population is also a slum population. So this is just for your overview. What is the percentage of slum population? Next, please. Now, first time, we should understand about few planning parameters also. So as I have taken the West Ahmedabad case study, so first time in India, right, when our Honorable Prime Minister Modi sir was our Chief Minister. So this is a very good planning intervention, I will tell. Why? So there was a already existing ring road. On other side of the ring road, there was an agriculture zone. So no type of development was permissible. So it was in agriculture zone, but it was having an access from ring road. It was having an access from artillery road, like Sola Road, Ogadaj Road, Silaj Road, or Ambli Road. So there were artillery road to connect the employment centers, either CBD or CG Road or anything. So they put in depth about 1000 meter, 1 kilometer affordable zone. And that is known as RH, residential affordable housing. And they were given sizable FSI, 2.7 also. And one can have only the affordable housing. Other type of things are not allowed. And there is also one rider in that. Because after preliminary TP scheme is sanctioned, and if your land falls in this residential zone, affordable residential zone, and if you are not constructing till the TP scheme is preliminary finalized, then automatically your land will go back to agriculture zone. So by doing that, they have tried to curb the speculation also. And they have selected agriculture zones. So just opposite in a residential zone, the prices are suppose 50,000 rupees per final plot area. Just opposite, the prices will be 20 to 25% lesser. So with a lesser price, compulsory affordable housing with good FSI, and in payment FSI also, government of Gujarat has given some discount. Suppose you are consulting less than 40, then only 10 or 20%, 10%. Suppose you are doing less than 60%, then only 20%. So instead of 40% payment FSI, there is a subsidy has been given in payment FSI also. Next, please. So this is a real estate market scenario. We will not touch that. Next, please. This also will not touch. Next, please. Next, please. Now we'll go directly to my study. And that is a case study of Western Ahmedabad. So India's economy is projected at a rate of 7.5% annually. This is a pre-COVID things, up to 2030. According to an analysis from Bain & Company from UK, about 500 million people will be moving into middle and higher income bracket over the period. So if from 2021 to 2030, our GDP will go, our economy will grow at a rate of 7.5% annually, then 5 crore more people will jump from EWS or LIG to middle class people. In order of varied implication for the evaluation of democracy and economic choices, the middle class may comprise nearly 40% of the country. If overall, if you don't put the income level or if you don't put any other level, so in urban population, right, 40% people are from this class. And the world history, economic history also says that when the country itself is developing, if you see the USA in 1910 or 20, right? At that time, the lower income group people were converted due to their income in a middle class population. So similarly, our case of India is like that. We are developing country. So parallelly, so middle class population does. So we grow, means Indian development country or Indian economy grow, the middle class population, number of quantum of middle class population will grow. So depending on the measure used, the estimated size of the middle class ranges between 78 million. This is one economist data, June 2012. So 78 million people to 60 and 4 million people. So this is a 2000 data. So we can say that 6 million plus people are already there in Indian urban area or Indian cities. Next, please. So there are actually now in middle class also. This is the subject of some sociologists. Social scientists can throw more knowledge or give more detail. So middle class can be classified into 5. One is a middle class who stays in rural area. Then second is a public sector middle class. Third is a urban private sector middle class. Fourth is a trader middle class. And fifth is a rising middle class. So as per the calculation of National Electoral Survey, NES, right? For the year 1999, 2004, 2009 and 2014, middle class population are accounted for about 33% of India's population in 2014. So it matches with my figure of 40%, which earlier in last slide I narrated. So this 33% middle class here, it says a rural middle class also. Now urban private middle class is the fastest growing category, which I was, in my initial talk also, I was putting much weightage on it. So urban private middle class is the fastest growing category among the all middle classes, increasing 7-fold. So earlier it was only 0.4% of the total population. Out of that 5, this is the one of the middle class. Now it has been to 2.7%. And while this is still a small proportion or portion, this class has a disproportionately large agenda setting capacity. What is that? Actually, these are the people who runs the computer. These are the people, those are mid-level or senior level clerk people. So if you don't want to, they are the bankers. They work in an insurance company. They work at a lower level at IT and ITES company. So they are the urban private middle class. So they are growing something 7 times more. Now, another one is a public middle class. These are the middle class are 3% of overall population, but these are the middle class working in government organization, semi-government organization, municipal corporation, various state government body. So they are 3%. The last one was a rising middle class. Is a large and fast growing group, growing from under 5% in 2004 to 12% in 2014. So in 10 years, they have been grown something about 2.33% times. So greater share of urban middle class wants the government to spend more on, and these are the people on social media or on Twitter, right? These are the people, and they are putting the pressure through various pressure groups. So they are the people who wants the government to spend more on infrastructure or subsidy. Instead of subsidy, gives more infrastructure, a reflection of the disproportionate share of subsidy benefits that the rural middle class receive. So they say that rural middle class are having number of the subsidy, but urban middle class doesn't have, so they are more interested in putting an infrastructure. That infrastructure includes the housing. Next, please. So this is the urban population of India 2004, 2014, 2020. So right now we are at 138 crore. So if we calculate, so today in 2021, so middle class is, if it is 42%, then 585 million people are in middle class. And out of 585, if I classify in middle class, all 5 categories there are, including the rural middle class, trading middle class, private middle class, public middle class, rising middle class. But in urban private middle class is about 5%, even though there are 69 million people. And if you consider the rising middle class, this rising middle class is mostly 92% are in urban location or in cities. So they are 19%, so they are 262.20 million. So you can see the urban middle class, which was 0.4%, has grown to 5%. So something 8 times. Similarly, rising middle class has a 4-time growth. Next, please. So since I talk about, since independence, there were EWS and LIG, lots scheme were there. The housing backlog for MIG in 2012 was an 8 million household with a 30% affordability gap. So 30% was not available or was not supplied.
Sir, you have 5 minutes.
Yes. Next, please. Now, MIG income analysis. So if you see, this is World Bank data in 2016, 2021, 2025. What was the dollar rate? And what is the average MIG income in US dollar of Indian citizen? So it was 7,700. So it was per year, 5,20,000 was 2016. And you see in 2021, it is a 5,87,000. So in that case, below that, this is a one standard chart I have given. Housing cost is a 26 lakhs rupees. Now, if he wants to avail the loan, 20% capital or loan amount, margin amount he has to pay. So 5,20,000 rupees he has to arrange from his own savings. Then he will be able for a 80% loan, suppose. Then he can give, next please, earlier one. Yes. So 80% then 20 lakhs is the average loan amount. The other things will be 8%, which includes the stamp duty and other things. So total amount is 22.46 lakhs. So for that, if we consider 10 year and 120 months, then that installment is 18,700 rupees. If their income is about 50,000 or less than that, 5,87,000, so they have to spend more than 40%, and that they cannot afford this 26 lakhs house in a Northern Rani or in Jagatpur or in Guma or in Chandkheda. Next, please. Now, this is how MIG income was there in 2012. So, cost of the house was 14 lakhs. Of a 54 square yard, I have taken as a sample size of my study or research. So 14% was the cost of, 14 lakhs was the cost of house. At that time, only 9% was a government tax. So it includes stamp duty, it includes VAT, it includes payment FSI, it includes AUDA or AMC charges. And his income was 2.28, right? Now, if you divide 14 lakhs with 2.28, the installment factor was 6.8. So all those people say if it is less than 6, then that house is affordable. So in 2010, a 14 lakhs house was affordable to middle class people. But now we turn back to 2020. The 30 lakhs is a house cost and MIG income is 3.4. So it is a factor has been increased by 8.6. So these houses for middle class people are not affordable. Next, please. Next, please. So this is a normal scenario where I have tried to do the size of the plot, zone, FSI, base FSI, payment FSI, built up of payment FSI, land cost, stamp duty, plan approval fees, government, Jantri rate, payment FSI toward that 0.9 FSI, right? And I have considered that house is less than 60 square yards, so 20% instead of 40%. So in normal, the house cost is like this. Next, please. Next. So, yes. So total cost of the house was a 39,45,000 rupees. Now GST is 6.95. I have considered builder profits in my all three equivalent. Stamp duty I have considered equivalent. What is the government revenue? You see, the middle class people buying a house of 39 to 40 lakhs rupees, what he's paying to the government through various taxes, various stamp duties like that. So government is getting 12 lakhs rupees. So I don't say you give subsidize, but can you reduce this? So 12 lakh rupees, if you consider, then it is about 35%. So when you buy a 2-bedroom house, 35% which you are paying to your developer, which directly and indirectly goes to government coffer. Next, please. So here the builder profit I have taken 18% and government revenue per unit is 21%. So government is collecting 21% through all these taxes and mechanism. Next, please. Now this is a scenario which I have visualized. Suppose government decides for this middle class, there will be a 50% tax reduction. So the stamp duty will be 50%. I have not considered the payment FSI will be as it is, but I have considered the GST will be 50% and stamp duty will be 50%. Then what is the scenario? Next, please. Next, please. So here you can see the house cost reduces by 37 lakhs and government revenue reduces to 5.7. In the earlier it was 12. So it is a 50% reduction. So government is getting 6%. Next, please. So in total, I have taken the builder profit again 18%, and government revenue is 11%. So it has been reduced from 21 to 11%. Next, please. So this is a second intervention. One intervention through 50%. If house is less than 60 square yard, then 50% stamp duty and other relaxation is government, instead of 21%, government is getting 11% in that house. This is a planning intervention where instead of 2.7, you are adding 0.9 more FSI. Right? In the same plot, same zone, same FSI, same market price, same the construction cost. What happens? Next, please. The same detail. Next, please. Right? Next. So you can see the cost of the 1 unit of 53 square yard, which I have taken, 23 lakhs, GST, stamp duty, builder's profit I have added, and government revenue. So in that case, by giving 0.9 FSI, so payment FSI component has been increased. So that's why here there is a more share of a development authority or municipal corporation. So government is getting around 24%. But house cost has been reduced. Next, please. Now, if we apply both the intervention, 50% tax reduction and additional FSI of 0.9. Next. 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 So, if you go for an overall comparison, so in a normal scenario, a 2-bedroom, 53 square yard house was costing 28 lakhs rupees. If you give 50% tax reduction, there is a 19% decrease in price of the house, which is 23.29 lakhs. If only planning intervention has been given, it is a 22.16 house cost, which is a 23%. If government decide both the intervention, then there is a deduction in 28%. So the house cost has been reduced from 29 lakh to 21 lakh. So it is observed that in normal scenario, the developer holds 80% profit and government get 21%. By reducing 50% tax, the special mechanism will reduce sizable cost compared to the normal scenario. So now if we go again the slide which I have shown before, the 2000 income, 2000 cost of the house, 2010 and 2020. And what is the installment factor? Now my house cost, instead of 28.78 lakhs, by both the intervention, it has been reduced to 20.73 lakhs. So this factor, earlier I was saying, in 2010, house, one can have a house with paying 20% margin. But in 2020, it was not possible. The figure was going, installment factor was going more than 7.5 or 8. So now it has been reduced to 5.9. So by doing that, that house cost I have reduced and I match with the income level of a middle class people. Next, please. So there is a sharp increase in the cost of middle class housing. One of the key factors is the increase in the payment of FSI, GST, 73% higher. Then only by a small planning intervention, increasing only 25% FSI, there is a decrease of 23% in the cost. By 20% tax deduction of 50%, there is a 19% decrease. And both intervention has decreased the house price by 28%. And this reduced price will generate or bring middle class population in the housing economic cycle. Also, given the sheer gap in demand and supply, one can assume that every private sector would want to venture into this sector. However, high land costs, archaic building bylaws, stringent licensing norm, delay in project approval, unfavorable banking policy make affordable housing project more uneconomical for private developer. Next, please. Next. So, this is my statement, housing poverty in urban India. What is that? The failures of past and current strategy. All the strategy has been failed in case of at least middle class people. And there is a need for a new blueprint. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to Amruta.
Yes, please. Just give me a time. Let me just share my screen.
We will be continue with question answer after the presentation of Amruta. So anybody who wants to ask any questions, be ready for it. After Amruta's presentation, I request Maitri to unmute the mics.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I first of all would like to congratulate GICEA for arranging these series of webinars, and this keeps us motivated in the tough and rough times that we are in. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Vatsal Patel for giving me this opportunity to present today in front of all the leading practitioners and professionals. I can hear some disturbance, I guess. Someone's mic is, I guess, disturbing. So I would also like to thank Mr. Vatsal Patel for giving me this opportunity to present in front of all the practitioners and professionals and academicians in particularly based in Ahmedabad and overall in India. I would take this opportunity also to thank Dr. Sejal Patel from CEPT University to always guide me and encourage me to, and have faith in my work. And nonetheless, Mr. N.K. Patel, sir, and his words and his expressions and experiences has actually mesmerized us, and his insights have always helped me. I had his presentation, I had gone through it, and it had helped me also to have nuances and at least track those nuances in my work also. So thank you, sir, for that. This particular research is a part of project that I, my husband Manan Patel, and my student Mr. Ajay Shetty have carried out in earlier this year. And particularly this research, we have carried out very elaborate literature review and primary survey, for which I had visited many developers from Ahmedabad, and I would also like to thank all the developers who had contributed to my knowledge in shaping up my research. As name suggests, we all know that there is a dire need of solving the riddle for middle income housing, and we have been hearing, and we have also heard it from NK sir, that there is always a concentration on EWS and LIG housing, but the very niche segment is where there is a need to kind of concentrate, and that's the real income group that we are going to target today in this research. To set the context, I will also try to give you background that, it started from the liberalization policy where, your economy broadened up, and there was suddenly the MIG sector and MIG group and the population started accelerating in urban centers of India. And due to which the new towns, the satellite towns came up in the peripheral development of the existing cities that we have in India. And that's a typical scenario that we see in cities of India. despite enormous housing developments which are happening in those new towns, like Rajarhat in Kolkata, or maybe Gurugram in Delhi, near Delhi, and Navi Mumbai near Mumbai. So all these towns have enormous housing developments happening, but it still are beyond the reach of middle income households because the prices are so high. And we have also heard it from the last lecture. There is, as I have already mentioned, there is proactive involvement of government in EWS and LIG housing, but very narrowed intervention in middle income households. And hence this research and also the earlier lecture had contributed to explore the need for augmenting the supply of housing for low income households and the middle income households, and which is the target of this research too. The recommendations and simulations at the end would validate the need for widening the scope of current policy interventions. Now let's think over it. I mean, all of us know that typically the supply of, I would say, affordable housing has been through the different supply mechanisms. The first being the model 1 that we call in academics, that the model 1 is particularly the EPC mode, where government develops on its own land, construct the dwelling units and sell it off in the market, which we call as low income housing or subsidized housing, all of that. The second model being where the private developer are investing, constructing on government land, where there is PPP mode. And the third one, and for the two first model which I have explained, in both of those models, government have been actually providing its assets, monetary assets or land assets. The third model which I am talking about is where it's absolutely dependent on the private sector or the market to decide and develop. So it's where the private developer is building on its own land and developing and supplying the affordable housing in the city. And that's the sector where government is acting as a facilitator or enabler, where private sector is encouraged continuously to bring and develop and supply affordable housing stock in the cities, as compared to the demand which was I guess showed from HFA POA document, which was registered in PMAY. The demand which was supposed to be met till 2022, that is 1 year from now, that was 87,703 dwelling units, out of which in case of EPC mode, we have just reached, I guess, 33,000. And that is where government has been continuously investing and putting its own efforts to deliver affordable housing. Now the conceptual framework through which we actually started our research, the inception happened that, government is providing incentives and different interventions are being continuously formulated to encourage the private sector to come and participate and develop affordable housing. But the problem is that different government agencies at state level or central level are seeing affordable housing in different lenses. Now, because they have different lenses, now I mean by different lenses is that one agency says that if the dwelling unit is of the size 90 square meter, maximum of that size, then it qualifies to be affordable housing. The other agency says that if it is not more than 40 square meter, then we call it as affordable housing. So see, these are the barriers, in a way. I would say these are the thresholds which are set by different agencies at different levels of government. Now what's happening because of the disparity in different definitions of affordable housing and how they see the affordable housing, the window that you see on the screen, the window which is left for the private sector to extract their required profit out of these projects is very minimalized. Now, if all these agencies understand affordable housing in a particular way, and all these definitions are converged so that the window is broadened. And so we are not saying that suppliers should get more profit, but we are assuming that once the supplier can get enough profit, more than his expected profit, then the additional profit can be transferred to the consumer. And that's the whole logic, to reduce the price of the dwelling units that we have in city. Now, similar notes of Mr. N.K. Patel, he has explained that he is also concentrating on the first segment of the total middle income group that is defined by our ministry. So that is MIG1, MIG2, and MIG3. So even in my research, I am sticking to MIG1, which is ranging from 60 square meter carpet area to 90 square meter carpet area. And that particularly this segment is also being recorded, or you can also see that when income tax department puts a threshold on the unit size ceiling, it also extends it till 90 square meter carpet area in non-metropolitan regions. Similarly, in case of GST Act, you also can see the same threshold. In case of residential affordable housing regulations from GDCR of Gujarat government, you would see it's reaching up to 90 square meters. Certainly it is built up area, but it's still reaching, it's nearby 90 square meter carpet area. Then Ministry of Finance also gives interest subsidy on the construction loans that developers opt for in developing affordable housing. If at all that developer develops dwelling unit up till the size of 60 square meter, he gets the interest subsidy on the construction loans. Interestingly, when we had brief discussions with the developers, we understood that many of the developers, at least in Ahmedabad's context, are not aware of this fact, that they can get construction loans and they can opt for this subsidy from the banks. And the last is PMAY. Which has extended the EWS categories threshold up to 40 square meter carpet area. The other thresholds are also mentioned in this matrix, but I will explain that in later stage in this presentation. Now, as you can see on the right side, the table shows that definition of household income groups as central and state governments define. Those are categorized in EWS, LIG, MIG1, MIG2, and MIG3. Now, as you can see, the CLSS benefits are particularly extended into MIG2 and MIG3 categories also. But other than CLSS, in PMAY, none of the other verticals are actually concentrating on middle income group category particularly. So for this particular region, for this particular research, what we have also as a part of researcher, all of three of us, we have identified that it is dire need for MIG1 category to have maximum supply. We will see why I'm saying and claiming this. We will see that as I go along with the further presentations. Just a quick overview of how many affordable housings are registered, projects are registered. So out of total 6,000 odd residential projects registered with Gujrera, there are 2,000 odd projects in Ahmedabad, which are almost 80%, out of which 556 projects are affordable housing projects. Again, out of those 556 affordable housing projects in Ahmedabad, 462 could be geotagged by us, and that becomes our sample size. Now again, out of 462 affordable housing projects that we have geotagged, and you can see that in the map also, 235 projects are lying in that bracket which we are actually targeted in this research. The bracket is the dwelling unit ranging from 60 square meter to 90 square meter. And we have found that from the database that it ranges, the price is ranging from 12 lakhs to 90 lakhs. And those units are ranging from 1 BHK to 3 BHK. And the plot sizes on which these projects are located are ranging from 260 to anything up to 70,000 square meter. Now, we will start with the analysis on each and every thresholds, and we'll try to see how these different thresholds set by different agencies of government are actually creating supply barriers for affordable housing. I would say particularly for the MIG 1 section between 60 square meter to 90 square meter. Now let's see, the first barrier is created, or I would say first thresholds that's set by Income Tax Act. And through its latest notification, which was there in 1st April 2020, it says that it has extended the affordability threshold on unit size from 60 square meter to 90 square meter. And it has additionally imposed a price ceiling of 45 lakhs. So I meant to say that the dwelling units which are sold more than 45 lakhs, even if they are lesser than the size and they are within the threshold limits of unit size, still they cannot opt for the income tax exemption benefit which this IT department gives. So that's the first threshold. So, and the other threshold, it's you can see that in the first map it says that the projects which are located on the plots which are lesser than 2000 square meter size cannot have the benefit of this act. Again, after the analysis, we understood that out of 235 total projects that were registered with GUJRERA, 176 projects, which are constituting to almost 75% of the total sample size, could actually get the IT benefit because they were having more than 2000 square meter plot size. Out of those, 171 projects had a commercial component lesser than 3% of the total aggregated carpet area in that project. Now that's the other threshold which is also set by the Income Tax Act, that commercial components should not be more than 3% of the total aggregated carpet area in that housing society. Because of which further projects could actually filter out in this go. Again, when we have the third threshold, which is 45 lakhs, we understood that out of 171, again, only 107 projects out of 235, that is 45% only of the total projects, which are actually registered as affordable housing projects with GUJRERA, but they could not avail the benefit of IT Act. So that's the sad story. Again, as we move ahead and understand the definition of affordable housing as set by GST Act, we understand that recently in 2019, it was changed, it was amended. So earlier than 19th March 2019, the definition was that affordable housing were charged with 8% GST with ITC. What ITC is, as almost all of you should understand, that it is income, it is input tax credit, right? So, and after March 2019, the affordable housing were charged at 1% GST without input tax credit. Now let's see the difference in the two. Any developer, whoever is developing or constructing a project, he buys the services, right? I mean, materials and labors. While buying so, they are paying almost somewhere around 16 to 18% of GST. You have already seen that in NKSR's lecture. So it ranges somewhere in between 16% to 18%. So now what? That 18%, a bit of it could be reimbursed from the credited tax after the sale was done. Now, because the input tax credit is removed, now the reimbursement has stopped. And because of which developer, whatever pays while buying the services unit, and which is obviously borne by the consumer. And hence, we typically have notion that GST is actually has reduced the GST rate, and it is actually benefiting the consumer, but it's not true. Actually, the situation is exactly reverse. It is indeed increasing the price of the dwelling unit. So this is again the other supply barrier imposed by GST. Now we have also seen different demand centers, and these demand centers are located, I mean, we have marked it from these are the catchment areas along the public transport nodes that we have, majorly from the AMTS, then BRT and MRT, which is about to come. Out of total, 17% projects are only lying in those demand centers, and all the others, 83%, are actually out. So they have to bear the cost of commuting at least till the nearest transport node that they have. Now, the quick glance on the findings that we had done from the analysis that we had. So it says that out of total 235 projects, because the supply barrier is imposed from Income Tax Act, 55% of the total registered projects, which are registered as affordable housing projects, 55% of those projects could not get the benefit of IT exemptions. Out of those 235, because of the GDCR supply barriers, which are created through the thresholds, 40% projects could not really get the benefit. Similarly, in case of potential demand centers, we understood that 80% of the total affordable housing projects are lying outside the demand center. So there is a dire need to understand that all the supply barriers which we have, and we can actually through certain recommendations, we can actually solve the whole issue. This is the first recommendation, which is for the unit size barrier. Now, after understanding and analyzing certain things, we understood that 90 square meter carpet area is typically what maximum analysts and different professionals have suggested, even the ministry, and many government agencies are trying to extend it to 90 square meter, and that's even our recommendation is for the GDCR and for the Ministry of Finance, while denominating a particular project as with the infrastructure status. And that's the first recommendation for unit size. The other recommendation is to remove the minimum plot size. For example, IT Act actually imposes that minimum plot size for a project to build and have the benefit of IT's definition is absolutely irrational and unreasonable according to us after research. Because if I hold a plot in Ahmedabad of size 1900 square meter, I am absolutely willing to develop a dwelling unit below 90 square meter carpet area in that project, then why am I actually not allowed to do so? And why am I not actually given the benefit of IT exemption? If we actually, through our research, could not find any substantial reason to keep this plot size limit. Similarly, for the minimum dwelling unit requirement in the project. So PMAY has minimum dwelling unit requirement of 250 dwelling units in the project to qualify a project to be affordable housing project. So if at all a person could have a small, maybe smaller size plot, and could, with all permutation combination, could just fit in 240 dwelling units in his plot, and still he cannot have the grants coming from PMAY, like the AHP vertical. He cannot opt for it just because he is developing 240 dwelling units, but not 250 dwelling units. And this also seems to us very unreasonable and irrational. And that's the recommendation from our side, that these two barriers could be easily removed. Now, when we see the recommendation for the minimum permissible FSI, so IT Act says project, if to qualify a particular project to be affordable housing project, it has to have 80% FSI of 80% of the permissible FSI used in that particular project. GDCR says that minimum of 1.8 FSI should be used. Now, what happens in particularly Ahmedabad's context, when a plot is abutting the road width of 9 meter and less than 12 meter, in between that range, the maximum height allowed is 16.5. And typically after simulation, I will explain that at later stage, at the end, we have observed that 80% FSI could not be used in such projects in major cases. And also 1.8 FSI could not be used. So as a part of recommendation, we are suggesting that before approving the plan should be scrutinized to check the FSI has been consumed optimally or not, whether the developer is actually wasting the FSI or not. All of that can be, and none of the developer would do it, but that's the recommendation. There is no point in keeping a barrier on the minimum consumed FSI particularly. Similarly, in case of GST Act, as I have already said, it is without input tax credit, and that's the problem now we are facing and the developers are facing. And hence, it is recommended that particularly for affordable housing projects, the GST applicable can be 1%, that's fine, but it should be with ITC. This would reduce the cost of that particular dwelling unit for the consumers. Now, the recommendation for the price ceiling. So AHP unit, as we have discussed, this is interesting. This is latest notification which has come up. So to support the PMAY is AHP vertical, MMGY, which is Mukhyamantri Gruha Yojana in Gujarat, it has also been amended. And the latest amendment says that EWS is not only till 30 square meter, but it has been extended till 40 square meter carpet area. And for that 40 square meter carpet area dwelling unit, the price limit is set in the municipal corporation region, that is in AMC limit, it is 15 lakhs. And outside AMC limit, but within the order boundary, it can be 12 lakhs. Now, as per the analysis that we have done from the database of GUJRERA, we understood that for the 40 square meter carpet area dwelling unit, this is unreasonable price ceiling. It could be increased, and the recommendation is it can be increased up to 30 lakhs to accommodate maximum dwelling units in this purview. Now, talking about the price ceiling which is imposed by GST and IT, which is the latest in a way, if we say that's in 2019 and 2020, these notification has come up. They have imposed, both of these have imposed the threshold of 45 lakhs on the price of a dwelling unit to qualify as affordable housing, as we have discussed. After talking to different developers and also understanding from the requests from Honorable Chief Minister of Gujarat and Maharashtra in 34th council meetings, MOMs, we understood that even government agencies are trying to increase this threshold up to 75 lakhs. And that's the recommendation even from our side. Recommendation particularly to remove the minimum unit density per hectare, and that is currently it is 225 units per hectare is the minimum unit density in GDCR for the exemptions that GDCR provides while purchasing chargeable FSI, right? So that's the point, and that is 225 units. Now just consider a plot of 1 hectare. So that is 10,000 square meter of size, and the minimum FSI is 1.8 as per GDCR. So considering that, the built up area, minimum built up area that developer would construct is 18,000 square meter. Now considering 90 square meter built up area unit size of one dwelling unit, he could build 200 dwelling units. Now just imagine, FSI restriction is 1.8 minimum, and the dwelling unit density of 225 units. Both these thresholds together don't work at all with the size of 90 square meter built up area. So either of the two can exist. So the minimum dwelling unit density could be reduced to 200 units per hectare, or else 1.8 FSI could be increased to 2.025 just to accommodate the requirements of 90 square meter carpet area, built up area dwelling unit. Again, the other imposition of the threshold of minimum maximum commercial component in a particular project, which is 3% as per the IT Act. Now just consider a plot of size 4,000 square meter. Again, the maximum FSI which has to be consumed is 1.8. Considering that the builder would construct 18,000 square meter on that plot, and maximum carpet area is for developing 18,000 built up, he would construct 15,300 square meter carpet. And now let's see, if IT Act is saying 3% of the aggregated carpet area, so 3% of 15,300, which is 459. So developer who is developing that affordable housing could just build 459 square meter in his own plot to cross subsidize his additional costings of developing affordable housing, the residential component rather. In case of GST, it says 15% of aggregated carpet area is allowed, which it gives, I mean, in that same project, then according to GST, that developer can build 2,295 square meter. And according to GDCR, it says 10% of the total utilized FSI. So that is 10% of the built up area almost, somewhere nearby that. So 1,800 square meter. So out of these three, GST is giving the maximum commercial component for developer to opt for. And hence, we recommend that rather than having this disparity in percentage of commercial component allowed in that project, let the developer decide according to the demand and market demand. Let him or her decide that how much commercial component can be built, and that can be sealed up to 15% of the aggregate carpet area. And let's have a common definition for all the three government agencies. These are the metrics of all the recommendations that we have already talked. Some portions we have actually changed the thresholds. Some thresholds we have kept constant. To just validate our recommendations, we have done two simulations. The first simulation, this is the last portion. And the first simulation talks about the project. This is a live project from, and we have taken and retrieved all the data from RERA's website. And this is located in Usmanpura, and it has a TOZ, transit oriented zone. And it's in R1 and has maximum FSI of 4. And it's abutting 12.2 meter wide road. Developer has constructed G+7 buildings and accommodated 35 dwelling units in this plot. The plot size is 389 square meter. He could consume 3.9. After understanding the current thresholds, we understood that in case of IT, he could fit in two parameters, two thresholds, but could not actually pass through the filter of other two thresholds. In case of GST, one of the two could be attended. And in GDCR, again, the same. Now, with the recommendations that we have imposed and we have suggested, this same project of size 83 square meter carpet area dwelling unit, this particular project could be sanctioned through all the three agencies that I have mentioned here. And because of these recommendations, the unit price is reduced by 14%, which is substantially high. And we assume that at least some of this portion, so out of 14%, some of it would probably go in the pocket of developer, but much of it is expected to be transferred to the consumer who is going to buy these flats, and hence the unit price is lowered down. And the second simulation says that this is a plot in Shela, which is RAH1 zone, which is absolutely a restrictive idea. I mean, the planning regulation on the developers and plot holders there. And now they can only build affordable housing with certain additional commercial component in their residential plots. But yeah, they can only build residential affordable housing in that zone. That's a restrictive. The RAH zone, and overall in Ahmedabad, Pan Ahmedabad, we now have RAH regulations which are voluntarily adopted by the developers. Developers are not compelled to develop affordable housing. But in RAH1 zone, developers are compelled to develop RAH. Now, when we take such project and such plot, and this size that we have taken is 4,138 square meter plot size, and the dwelling unit size is number of dwelling units are 80 of size 90 square meter built up area, and sold at unit price of 45 lakhs. The developer could just utilize 1.75 FSI because the abutting road is 9 meter. Now, from 9 meter to less than 12 meter, if the abutting road is there, the plots and the plot holders who are wanting to develop 90 square meter carpet area, for them, their assets of plots and the assets of land become absolutely dead in Shela. So that's the, I'm not saying for all the plot holders, but only for the plot holders which are fitting in this particular scenario that I am posing. So this is all about the second simulation, and I end my presentation here. I would again like to absolutely thank for this opportunity and put my research in front of all the practitioners. And I hope this would have shared, I could really share a bit in the whole attempt of augmenting the supply of affordable housing in Ahmedabad city. So this is my and my colleagues' efforts in the research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amruta. Really, I'm very much excited by your research and your numbers and everything. And I'm so excited that after seeing your presentations and with some of the examples of N.K. Patel, I request you, both of you, that you should make one recommendation for the government, or you can draft a policy for the middle income housing, and let us give that presentation to the government, and we suggest some policy from GICA with reference to your study for further action from the government side. So it will be very good. It will be ultimately helpful for the society and for the middle income bracket people, that if government can at least give certain type of incentives or certain type of policy making, they give certain exemptions from the, or even they remove some ambiguity within the interpretation or within the law, then also it will be very much helpful, and that thing can be ultimately boost the overall economy of the Gujarat, as well as it will be helpful for the middle income people to get at least economical or affordable shelter. From your thesis, I understand that some of the thing is to be required to be represented with the central government and IT department and with the finance minister, and majority of things is required to be dealt with the state government. So I request that at both the front, though we are with the Gujarat Institute of Civil Engineers and Architects, but I'm ready to represent the things at central level as well as with the state level with your recommendations under the umbrella of GICA. So I welcome both of you for such type of recommendation or draft policy, so we can forward it within limited time to the government so they can start thinking after COVID situation.
Sure,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I request my secretary for vote of thanks. And I'm really excited with presentation of both of you with good numbers. Probably it's a really remarkable work by both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apurva.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you, Vatsal bhai. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our mentor, Sri N.K. Patel sir and Ms. Amruta Patel for sharing their views and knowledge on today's subject of middle income housing. As usual, N.K. Patel sir has explained the subject in depth with so much detailed data. Actually, Amruta Patel, she also explained very well with her data. Today, many town planners have participated from different cities of India. I would like to thank them for joining this webinar. A special thanks to PC Snail Group for allowing us to use their Zoom account. We are very much thankful to all participants for attending today's webinar organized by GICA. Thank you very much. Thank you. Vatsal bhai,
Good
want to
night.
say something?
Good night. Yes, I want to announce one webinar on 10th of this month. It is with the Dr. Bhimani, the psychologist. The topic is ચાલો એક મિનિટ હું તમને જોઈને કહી દઉં કારણ કે ટોપિક બહુ જ ઇન્ટરેસ્ટિંગ છે. ચાલો મનની વેક્સિન લઈએ.
Yes, yes.
Something like that.
Yes.
અને Dr. Bhimani, Manoj Bhimani is a very renowned psychologist, and I hope that you all will. Chalo Manni Vaccine Laiye is the title. So I request you all to join on 10th. We will share the link and also circulate it to your other groups also, and with parents also you can join that webinar because it will be very much helpful. After COVID, the situation is going to be a new normal, but at the same time our psychological problem and as well mental strength is also required to cope up with the new normal. So the Bhimani's lecture will be very much helpful for getting the strength and back to the normal life. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.